You ever have one of those films that you go into and yet you don't know how to feel with how it'll turn out? That's a feeling I had going into Transformers 1, the new animated prequel origin story involving the Autobots. Despite some of the hype, this is a film that, quite frankly, I had a lot of mixed feelings about going into. I mean, this was a film that did seemingly have a lot going for it, like the fact that it was coming from Toy Story 4 director Josh Cooley, and I was someone that really loved Toy Story 4, as well as the animation by ILM, which looked amazing, but there were things about it that didn't fully sell me. For one, the trailers didn't really do anything for me. I wasn't all that impressed by them, especially the first one, which I thought was very bad. The second reason was that it was another animated film coming out from Paramount, and you all already know how I've been feeling regarding their animated films. Okay at best, awful at worst, Mutant Mayhem the outlier. And the third reason is probably the fact that this film had an uphill battle for me since, well, I'm not exactly a big Transformers fan. I'm sorry, I know I'm disappointing some people saying that, and I really hate to say it, but this is one of those franchises I haven't exactly been able to get into. You can probably blame that on the Michael Bay movies, which were some of the most soul-sucking things I've ever seen in my life, but this just hasn't been able to click for me like other franchises from the 80s have. Even the animated film, The Transformers, the movie, which is the title, if ever I've heard one, also didn't do that much for me. I watched it earlier this year, and I gave it a fair chance, but I didn't care for it all that much. It basically felt exactly what I would expect from an 80s animated film. Toy-driven, characters that aren't exactly deep, and also bare-bones plot. Like, even the most dramatic moments, like Optimus Prime's death, just didn't do anything for me. I felt nothing watching this. I get why this does have its fans, but it just didn't do much for me at the end of the day. Sorry guys, but this was not my thing. So, yeah, this new Transformers film seemed like it was having a big uphill battle for me when I was going into it due to all I mentioned. However, I was still a little optimistic given that the film was getting good buzz leading up to its release, and like always, I'm eager to give every film a fair chance and see whether or not it'll impress me. And so, I went to catch an early screening of it on Saturday, and overall, how did it turn out? I can say that I was actually really surprised by this film. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have the highest expectations going into this, and I really thought it was gonna be another clucker within Paramount's animated catalog, but much to my surprise, this was a really fun animated action film that is gonna go down as being one of the most fun animated films of the year. It's certainly not a perfect film, but I can say that along with Mutant Mayhem, this is one of Paramount's best animated films in a while. On the planet of Cybertron, before they became the bitter rivals we know today, Optimus Prime, then known as Orion Pax, played by Chris Hemsworth, and Megatron, then known as D-16, played by Brian Tyree Henry, were best friends working in the mines down in the depths of the planet, hoping to do more than before. After competing in a race, they are then set down in even lower levels, where they soon meet Bumblebee, played by Keegan-Michael Key, who has been sorting trash. And from there, the three discover an SOS message from the legendary Alpha Trion, played by Lawrence Fishburne, pinpointing the location of the legendary Matrix, the most powerful core to the Transformers, and a key in order to defeat the Quintessons. And so, they, alongside another miner named Alita, played by Scarlett Johansson, set off for the surface to find the Matrix, where they discover a sinister plot being led, and are soon given Transformer powers to do what's right, which all but starts a rift between Orion and D. And that's all I'm going to say regarding the plot, because there are elements that were not revealed in the trailers that go into spoilers, so yeah, let's just leave it there. I really can admit that I was genuinely surprised by this film. Like I previously stated, I didn't have the highest expectations going into this due to my lackluster feelings for both the Transformers franchise and Paramount's animated slate, but I can say this is a really big step forwards for both in the right ways possible, as there's a lot of really great stuff to be found in this film. While I can say that the story is certainly one that has been told before and is very familiar, it is one that is told very well and excels greatly. One thing that did surprise me is that the film is actually a lot darker than I thought. The trailers did not do this film justice, as it was really over-reliant on being light and fluffy and humor that was just not landing, but there is genuine darkness to be found here as we see the film play out and watch these characters grow and learn some harsh truths. One of the very best scenes in the film is when the quartet find Alpha Trion and learn a very horrible dark secret that is very well conveyed. It's exceptionally gripping and brutal, and I really am glad that it is, because it really lands greatly compared to previous installments. I also appreciate the fact that there aren't any annoying humans in the film as well, because they were insufferable in the Bay films and said some of the dumbest lines in film history.
Search the property. What do you mean search the property? You don't have a warrant.
My face is my warrant.
Every time I hear that line, I think I lose an IQ point. Seriously, how do you write a line like that into a script? But yeah, keeping the film squarely focused on the Transformers is something I'm glad they did, and I know that a lot of Transformers fans are also going to appreciate that as well. I can also say this works exceptionally well as an origin story and plants the seeds that set up this franchise perfectly. I'll talk about it a bit more when we talk about the characters, but I'll just say the way we see them meet and the bonds and rifts that grow between them feel so natural and earned. Nothing about it feels forced, and I do greatly appreciate it. However, the one thing about this film that excels more than anything else is the action, which also ties into the animation, and it is absolutely stellar. The direction by Josh Cooley is in top form here, and the way he directed the action is astonishing. It's also perfectly constructed and keeps you on the edge of your seat as you watch it play out, and luckily it doesn't come across as headache-inducing like the Michael Bay films. It doesn't rely too much on explosions, it's well edited, and it helps the film looks gorgeous too. As I stated previously, the film was animated by ILM, and much like their previous animated film, Ultraman Rising, it looks fantastic. The environments are gorgeous and beautifully rendered, with the world of Cybertron really coming alive here. The planet really thrives with its cyberpunk energy and cool technology, and man, I could look at this film forever. It is truly gorgeous. And that leads me into talking about the characters, and they are also great. As I said before, the bonds and rifts are one of this film's major strengths, and the highlight is undoubtedly the relationship between Orion and Dee. The way their friendship turned into a rivalry felt so natural and heartbreaking, and nothing about it felt forced. It's made clear at the beginning of the film that the seeds are starting to become planted, and you can see how it would all go from uneasy but trustworthy to not seeing eye to eye at all anymore. And the way each of the two are shaped do work perfectly. You can see how Orion's optimism and goofiness turned him into becoming the skilled leader he would become, and how Dee's frustration and unwillingness to Orion's antics led him to taking sides against him, and it's made even more terrific due to the fantastic vocal performances. Especially Brian Tyree Henry as Dee. I'm gonna say it, he owns this film. This is such a terrific performance, and one of the best of the year. And the other heroes are fun too. Bumblebee has his moments, even if they probably overdid him being too much of a chatterbox. And Alita was a cool no-nonsense character that warms up to Orion and takes his side. And without getting into spoilers, the villains are also great too, and they are genuinely menacing and intimidating. Now, as much great stuff there is in the film, I wouldn't call it on par with, say, the Spider-Verse films or Mutant Mayhem for two reasons. One is that the screenplay is slightly clunky at times. There are some really awkward lines in this film that the actors struggle to read through correctly, and the humor doesn't really land all the time.
Everyone ready?
I was born ready.
On three. One.
Ha ha, they ran off the cliff when they weren't looking. How funny. Waka waka waka. Though, to me, the biggest problem with the film is that the first act is really, really clunky. I'm not gonna lie, I think they probably should have really done a bit more work with how the film opens, because it really is messy. The sequences are not well stitched together, some of the jokes don't land, the exposition delivery was awful, and also the way the plot was being driven came across as forced. It's what holds the film back from being truly great. However, the second and third act do a lot of heavy lifting for this film and really help carry it across the finish line intact to the point where I was having a whole lot of fun. So, Yeah, I can say that I did enjoy Transformers 1 quite a bit. I was surprised. While its first act is very clunky and the script needed a bit more polish, the film still excels due to its strong origin setup with dark moments, thrilling animated action, and very well developed characters with tight bonds and riffs. I can say if you're a Transformers fan, you will really love it, and even if you aren't, I still think this film is worth a watch. It's certainly a lot better than the previous films, and is truly a lot of fun. And that's why I'm giving Transformers 1 an 8. Again, not as good as Spider-Verse or Mutant Mayhem, but still tons of fun. While I have had issues with both the Transformer franchise and Paramount's animated film slate for a while, I can say this film really is a step forward in all the right ways that make this a ton of fun. It's suspenseful, it's thrilling, it's action-packed, it's gorgeous to look at, and it's certainly more than meets the eye.
Gosh, raise your hand if Wave is in your name. There's a lot of Wave.